Welcome to Media and Monuments, presented by Women in Film and Video in Washington, D.C. Media and Monuments is conversations featuring industry pros speaking on a wide range of topics of interest to media makers.
Welcome to Media and Monuments. I'm your co-host, Tara Jabbari. Currently, I'm in Cape Town, South Africa, and I'm very lucky to be speaking with actress, writer, producer, and comedian Shimmy Isaacs. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you, Tara, and welcome to the city of love and light.
Is that what it's called?
It is.
I didn't know.
Yeah.
I just thought it was the giant beast that's known as Table Mountain.
Oh yeah, well, but you know what? Now you're talking to like a local person.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. We keep the mountain for the tourist attraction, but if you want to get into love and light, honey.
Thank you.
Yes.
Are you born and raised in Cape Town?
No, so I'm a small town girl, which I think in the States could also be associated with being from like the countryside, part of the Western Cape. So I'm from a little town, which is actually just an hour and a half outside of Cape Town, called Worcester. However, it is, it's alongside the winelands. Culturally, we are worlds apart from the city life in Cape Town. Yeah, so that's where I'm originally from. Yeah.
And South Africa is quite big, and one of the things, we'll get into it, but I saw a lot of similarities with the United States.
Mm-hmm.
It's diversity.
Mm-hmm.
Like US doesn't have an actual official language, while South Africa has 11 official languages.
Yes.
Our history, unfortunately, is very similar against racial biases and racism and all that stuff. So I was really excited. I was traveling around Africa. I was in Senegal and Kenya, and now I'm here. And it's exciting that I finally got to speak with a filmmaker and a person who works in media.
Yeah.
And you're not just from a comedy background, but I've seen your dramatic work. So your show that you're on, Unseen, is currently on the top 10 in South Africa. It is also available in the United States on Netflix.
Yes.
I watched the first episode and a half, and I'm like, this is heavy. This is like, I was always on edge. Yeah. So can you share a little bit of how you got started into the entertainment industry and what the languages and the ways that telling stories in comedy and drama? And do you speak any of the other languages in South Africa?
So my father speaks 7 and he only gave us 2. Very selfish of him. So I only speak English and Afrikaans. I am a fluent bilingual performer and writer. Yeah.
Okay.
And I just want to add that we are number 2 in South Africa, Unseen, and we are number 4 globally.
Nice.
Unseen. So I received my flowers 2 days ago from Netflix, celebrating.
Nice. Look at Netflix.
Yeah. They treat us well. I have to also say it is one of the first crime thrillers, done by Gambit Productions. And it was an absolute dream working with Gambit. It is Black owned. And it is also, the founders are actually my former students.
Oh, really?
Yes. So when I was wrapping up my degree after film school, I started teaching within my final year of my honors degree, and then that followed with another year and a half after I came back from New York. And I absolutely loved teaching, but I was very young at the time.
And what were you teaching? I
was the head of acting.
Okay.
Yeah. And so that's what I specialized in, which was screenwriting and acting. Those were my majors. And so it's like coming full circle to work with a company that, I had the privilege of kind of being there at the beginning of their film career. Yeah.
Yeah, almost like full circle.
Full circle, yeah. So it's not just the story. It was everything about Unseen that I think was so refreshing for South Africans in particular, because there's always some budget constraints whenever we're trying to create in a country like South Africa, from the writing process, you have to consider budget. So that really limits the creativity a lot of the times. And I think they took a big gamble and, costs were cut here and there in order for the quality, the aesthetic value of the story to really sort of have a international appeal, which it has had. And so we are extremely proud of that.
Can you share with listeners what it's about?
So Unseen, it's the story of our lead actress known as Zinzi in the world that is on her way to meet her husband who's being let out of prison, and he doesn't appear. And so she basically goes in search, looking for her husband. And through the search, she kind of gets pulled into the sort of organized crime underbelly of the world of crime, because her husband had actually gone to prison for someone else.
I was going to say, because he didn't do it. I could tell.
Yeah.
And at the end of the first episode, they're like, if your husband didn't do what he did, your son would still be alive. And I'm like, what?
Yes.
What?
Yeah.
And
And then obviously my character alongside the lead, I'm her landlady. And I think one of the things I really even just enjoyed about this character, because it's so far removed from who I am, but it's something I know I do really well. I play older characters really well, and I embody that world. And then, of course, I have a very good understanding of the environment and that very specific Cape Town brown culture, So tapping into a character's voice was essential, so that we could stay true to the people that live in that environment and that community. And I think that is also what really kind of blew people away about the abilities that I have as a dramatic actress, because that's really what I am. Before I'm a comedian, I'm an actress. Yeah. And this is not necessarily the first television series or acting that I've done being in the business. I'm also on a local telenovela in Cape Town or South Africa called Arensvlei, which is Afrikaans. So I have a huge sort of following within those communities. It's the first all brown people of color telenovela / soapy, so to speak, written by a brown man. And I really wanted to be a part of that movement as well.
When we got to South Africa, we do a little cultural class. We also take a language class. So they taught us a bit of Xhosa. Yep, and I can't do it.
That's okay.
They did us a whole sentence, which translated. They taught us a sentence that translated into "the skunk went up the hill," because it had a lot of the. And we're like, what? And you're like, relax your tongue. And we're like, well, we are. Anyway, so but when they did, because of the diversity, similar to the United States, they were explaining to us what is colored, what is black, what is other, what is white, what is this. You're saying brown, and usually in the United States, we usually say Black American or African American and stuff. But we haven't really used brown. Brown, I think, could mean a different thing. Can you explain what that means?
Yeah, I mean, you see, the thing that separates us in this country is language, not so much race. We're not as, a lack of a better word, obsessed with race, so to speak, but primarily, your language determines your race, so to speak, in South Africa. Okay, because you can have a black looking Xhosa man, but who would be referred, if he speaks Afrikaans, he would be then called a colored, right? Which is the term that is still used in South Africa. So myself, I'm a colored person within the landscape of South Africa. And due to the languages that I speak, that also sort of determines where I fall in terms of class. And in terms of social construct, right? So if you're an Afrikaans speaking colored person, and this is just also part of the history, these aren't my sort of personal beliefs, but predominantly, Xhosa speaking people, due to the apartheid that we have had and to some degree still experience, we were seen as better. better than the Xhosa or Zulu or Tswana speaking people, right? Because remember, you also have very light skin, known as yellow bone people within that community. But based simply solely on the language that I speak, I would be seen as the white man's,
So what would your dad be considered?
So my dad is actually Khoisan. So I'm mixed in terms of tribe. Yeah, so I'm tribally mixed. So my father is from the Northern Cape, right? So he is a purebred Griqua, known, which is a tribe that stems from the Khoisan or the San tribe, right? And he moved down into the Western Cape when he was a teenager, raised by his aunt, met my mother, who's Malay. Yeah. So my mom is from a Malay descendant, and then they mixed, and then you get me.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm the brown one. And then my middle sister is very white. She looks like my dad's people. And then my youngest sister is dark skinned. So people always confuse her, with being Xhosa or Zulu or anything like that. Just she's extremely dark skinned, and she looks like my mother's father, who has the West African sort of Malay descent. Yeah. I actually recently just got my results back because I took the ancestral DNA.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I'm we're also busy writing a horror feature film, and so I'm delving into the supernatural of the Khoisan and sort of the Dutch community, delving into that. And I decided to get my DNA done so that I could get some proper research. And I was blown away when I saw the amount of West African blood in me, because I had no idea. Yeah.
And that's exciting for the horror genre, because we watched in Senegal, there's a film. Oh, no, I forgot what it's called. But the whole thing was a Muslim family, and the girl is in love with another boy, but she has to marry this man. The family shows. And then it's like a spell because of the tribal backgrounds that they have.
Yeah.
So can you share a little bit more detail?
I mean, it's not really about intimate relationships as such. The question that I kind of ask as the writer and the artist is, we've in recent years been going through quite a lot of reclaiming land issues in the country. And my dad, who's still alive, he a couple of years ago got some land back up in the Northern Cape, right? It's land that was where it was either forcefully taken from people, or our colonizers just did it illegally, so to speak. So my dad had then gotten this piece of land where he's now farming on, and so forth and so forth, And the question that I kind of explore as the creator comes down to, whose land is this? Who was here first? And then we kind of go from there, because our lead character's actual father in the narrative passes away, and she's pulled out of the city where she has to go and attend his funeral. And there's a land that he's left behind for her, but this land for some reason doesn't bear any fruit. And it's been cursed. I know. I love and then a random housekeeper shows up, very random white woman. But is she of those times, or is she an old spirit? We don't know.
Oh, it's exciting. Keep us posted on that one.
I'm definitely going to. I'm probably going to call you and be like, hey, I need some advice.
Because we also, again, very similarly to United States, there is now this idea of giving back to the ownership of the Native Americans.
Yeah. I mean, and the other thing I must add to the exploration of the plots is also, the characters' sort of internal conflict, because, a lot of it is sort of loosely based on my own experience, growing up in a very sort of cosmopolitan way. And I know very little about my dad's background. And so that kind of sparked this idea where I'm trying to find out more about who my own father is and where his lineage and things like that. And so we will also be introduced to a character that has to come to terms with her bloodline, you know, and that for me is always the fascinating and interesting thing is to see how characters sort of overcome their own sort of personal ignorance to things. Yeah.
So I was watching one of your interviews and you were saying as a writer, you always think of the characters first.
Always.
And sometimes when you take a class or, you know, you hear from others and they say, well, what is the plot? What is the main thing that's kind of happened? Then you think of the backgrounds of those characters. But for you, it's slightly different.
Well, for me, it is because I think the acting aspect, you know, training that I have, and then also, you know, I specialized in human behavior and I specialized in psychology, which was part of the subjects that I took up it after. And so everything for me starts with a feeling. Right, what I'm going through, or something I've experienced, or watching other people, and I would kind of go, I wonder what her life is about, what has brought her to this point, right? And that is something I enjoy because now my character really leads me, and there's very, I don't want to say little, but it almost makes it somewhat easier for me to discover the plot through how the character thinks about themselves and how the character feels about the world that they live in, you know, because you can have a great plot and you can have great scenes and you can have really great ideas. But if you don't understand why the character moves the way they move, or speak the way they speak, or vote the way they vote, or have the conservative views they have, then for me, that just creates more work because now I've got to go back and go, well, would she do this? Because now I have her doing this and that. And so I really like to start with a solid understanding, a solid emotional understanding of who this person is and the journey they are going to take us on.
I also wanted to discuss what I had known before coming to South Africa is it is the country that has the most reported cases of rape and violence against women and children.
Yeah.
That's reported. It's probably higher all over the world. But and something that I was watching in Unseen, even in the first episode.
Yeah.
With the male landlord, not even man that he is.
The one who plays my husband.
Yeah.
Enrico.
I was like, what the hell?
Yeah.
But you know, just like, or like she walks in a bar and they're like, what are you doing here? And it's like everyone is staring at this woman and she is property. Your husband is no longer there. And so we'll take care of you kind of thing. I think women all over the world can understand that. I even remember when she's getting to her door and she then gets to her door, then gets the keys. I'm like, no, sweetie, you're supposed to get the keys before. Yeah. Like you're trained like that and stuff. And then, spoiler alert, thankfully you call for him and then he's like, fine, you cock tease. And I'm like, what? She was just walking, you know, all that stuff. And as you're speaking, you're talking about you're using the she pronoun. Have you seen how stories in South Africa or in general, and do you think female, because you are female, how does that story come? Like, does it always have to be mentioned that the endangerment of women being attacked and stuff like that?
Well, I think with a particular scene like that, the writers really needed to stay true and honest. Also to the male character's intentions, you know, and what his goals were and the outcome that he wanted. So those are very, very real moments and encounters that especially our lead character who plays a domestic, and she has several domestic jobs, right? Because characters in that world, but also in reality, are sort of just seen as a doormat. You know, you can do with them whatever it is that they want. And because she's in such a fragile space, it only makes it so much more poignant for her, for antagonist type of characters and people to sort of come in. You know, because I've experienced it, you know, I'm gay, but that doesn't exclude me from experiencing things that most heterosexual women experience. You know, if you're vulnerable, lonely, or in need of money, you know, any person that has ill intention would play on that. And I think for the purposes of the story and the scene, we had to have that there, because it's also, the stakes are really high for her. And what we also depicting is outside of leaving her home, inside the house, she's also dealing with stuff.
Yeah.
All right. So externally, we see the guns and the underground sort of organized crime, and then she comes home and she can't even have peace and quiet there. You know? Yeah.
How did you get started in? It seems, I could be wrong, comedy then drama, or vice versa, and then what is the different languages or fields of portraying?
So I had no idea what stand-up comedy was. No, I'm a fully classically trained actress, theater and acting for screen, and I had about 5 majors in my first year, which were physical theater, stage, and then it was also stunts. I specialized in stunt training, and then of course I had my music that I did, and then acting for screen. So that's in the first year of film school. In my first year was second year. They put me straight into second year. Yeah.
Nice.
And then as I progressed towards my honors degree, I ultimately started specializing in acting for film and screenwriting. Because I understood very early on that I was going to have to create work for myself, which is why I wanted to write. And we were a few people of color at a very prestigious film school, and we all got scholarships, and based on the demographics when the school kind of got to the city. Once I understood what my purpose was as an entertainer, I was able to kind of, have a plan. And went to New York, specialized a little bit there. Yeah, with my girlfriend at the time, who was New York. She was from New York, but she was doing her master's in creative writing. Yeah, at UCT. And so, I kind of made the painful decision that I needed to focus on my career. And it was just a few months. I was like, I'm coming, I love it so much. And I ran up and stayed there. And then I got into specializing a technique, which is I think they might have changed the name. At the time, it was called Black Nexus. And it's a school set up by Susan Batson, who's one of the few Black acting Hollywood coaches. And I really wanted to be in an environment that was sort of community-based. I didn't want to be in another institution because I went to NYU and I kind of visited a couple of places, and it just wasn't for me. There was something else I wanted to experience, and I think I wanted to learn. And so got there, did that, and it became very clear to me that I wasn't needed there in America. There was nothing that I could offer them that was going to, at the time at least, made me feel like my creative voice was being heard. And I understood that I had so much to offer. It was just not the place for me. I needed to come back home, and ended that relationship. Very hard decision once again, but I knew I had to come home and create work on this side, which is what I then did. And I wrote my first play called Alipat van die Woester, which means all the way from. But Alipat, it's sort of a slang term, and then funny, meaning from, but spelled Funny, right? That was the first thing I wrote. And it had a comedy element to it, right? And still, again, no idea what stand-up comedy was. I'm from a small town, never even saw what stand-up comedy was. My favorite comedy actor was Martin Lawrence. Like, I watched Martin, but I just thought he was an actor, right? Yeah. I thought he was an actor. No idea until a mate of mine, when I gave up lecturing at AFDA, I'd come back from New York. My writing lecturer called and said, hey, I'd love for you to come teach. I said, okay. I was too young, right? And I was too smart. And when I say smart, for my own good, and I needed to go and experience the industry. And I knew what I was giving up. I was giving up a cushy job with a cushy income, but that doesn't stop me because I don't come from money, and I am not defined by those things, right? And so I was super broke. And I remember walking down Long Street one day, and I had just come back from a casting that I walked out of. I was sitting at this casting, and I looked at the number on my chest, and I was number 317. I'll never forget that. 317. Never forget that number. And there's a group of like very beautiful women and guys, and they weren't actors, I could tell. They were just beautiful people. And I remember sitting there going, this cannot be my life. I am too gifted and I am too talented to just become a number. To just become a number in the hopes that someone would recognize something in me. So it was highly crucial for me to first recognize my own greatness, right? Because there I'm going from casting to casting to casting. And like most of us, looking for some type of affirmation. It's not even about getting the job. It's wanting to know that you're good enough to at least have a call back, right? And I couldn't do that. I couldn't do that. Maybe I was a bit too, stubborn, but I just couldn't do it, right? I could never forgive myself if I didn't at least try to create work for myself and to really take charge of my own destiny. That's ultimately what I had to do. And so my friend, he's passed on now, Rustum. I was walking down Long Street, and he's like, hey, and he sees me and he calls me. He's like, hey, girl, what's up? And we went to school together. I was like, hey, bro, man, I'm out here trying to do the thing. He's like, you still do that acting stuff? I'm like, man, I'm trying, bro. He goes, check this out. I'm trying to start stand-up comedy here in Cape Town. I'm like, what's that?
Oh.
Literally, what's that? He goes, man, you just stand on stage and tell jokes. I'm like, oh, because I have a theater background. So I was like, oh, it's like a one-woman show.
Yes.
Yeah. And he goes, yeah, it's exactly like that, right? No idea who Chris Rock was. No idea who Dave Chappelle was. This is in 2008. No idea who any of the top comedians, because my world was purely acting and film, right? And I remember writing like a 5-minute thing, but even the way I was writing was very theatrical, right? And he's like, no, you got to get to the jokes quicker, right? And I was like, oh, okay, go, I get it. And first night, standing ovation and cash in hand. And so it's myself, Gino, Rustum August, Milo, and I've got to say these names, and Zinzi. So I was the only girl. These guys, we started stand-up 2008 in Long Street at a club called Zula, or a restaurant, so to speak, called Zula in Long Street at the time. And something happened that night because people were chanting my name.
Wow.
And my name has always been very important to me in the business, because in South Africa, unfortunately, you become a character first before you become the artist. And that has been throughout years of the film and television industry, where no one would know the actor's actual name, right? And people would call them by the character names that they play in a soapy or whatever. And I'm an artist. I didn't want that. And stand-up comedy gave me that springboard. And I was like, man, I got cash in hand. That's not bad money for like 5 minutes. And so it just kind of happened from there. And then other, at the time, legendary comedians who I didn't even know, like Kurt Schoonrod, saw me. And I went straight to a supporting act. So I'm grateful that I don't know what an open mic experience is, because I believe that my acting background and my understanding for the medium of theater in itself really kind of set me apart from every other comedian that was coming up at the time, And he was like, I've never seen anything like this. You're so confident. You're so this. I'm like, because I'm doing something that I am truly an expert in. Like I always say, I'm not a doctor. I'm not a mathematician. God didn't grant me those gifts, but he sure as hell granted me the gift of storytelling. And I stand in that very firmly and very confidently, just like a doctor would when he's checking you out or he's giving you medication. He's an expert in his field, and I'm an expert in what it is that I do. no matter what medium you give me, I'll be able to deliver within that space. And so that is how my stand-up career started. And then by 2010, I was doing huge shows at theaters, at auditoriums, and the Showbiz Report saw me and was like, "Who's this?" And I was edgy also with the things that I was talking about. I don't censor myself, but I try not to offend people. I don't think anybody ever wants to offend people. I'm at least not that kind of artist. I really don't. When I speak, I try to be as honest as the experience would allow me to be. And then they named me like the top
comedian.
I was like, wow, this is cool. And people started calling my name Shimmy Isaacs, and I was making money, but I was not acting. I was acting throughout all of that.
Right.
Yeah.
So you have a theater background.
Yes.
For live performance. You've done on camera work.
Yes.
On a set, and you've also done stand-up comedy.
Yeah.
What are some of the differences and your favorite parts and your least favorite parts of it? Do you have a preference?
I think the thing I love about stand-up comedy, it really gives me the opportunity to kind of, because I'm a character actress as well, right? It gives me the opportunity to really do that uncensored, right? Because when you go onto a set, you're given a script, and then if it's a really cool director, he or she would allow you to, make it your own, which is ultimately what you want as a good director. You want, if you trust the actor enough, you go make it your own, right? So the great thing about stand-up for me is that I feel completely free. I feel completely free and uncensored when I'm on that stage, right? And the only people I have to please is my audience. I don't have to worry about an executive. I don't have to worry about paying anyone else other than myself and the crew.
Yeah.
Right? Which is a small crew. It's the lighting guy, sound guy, and so forth. In terms of language, same thing. Stand up, free. And I speak I'm, depending on the audience, it's always bilingual when I'm doing big shows. I do it English and Afrikaans. Not just Afrikaans, I have to refer Afrikaans.
Okay.
So there's a big difference with Afrikaans lingo and Afrikaans lingo. So Afrikaans is the language of the colonizer. Afrikaans is the language that we made ourselves, like we colored people created themselves. Yeah. Very similar to the African Americans, like who has certain slangs, like, man, why you flexing, bro? Why you? And I remember going, what does flex mean? Like,
right.
So, but just in the South African context, yeah.
And you did share. You lived in New York before we started recording. You also went to Chicago.
Yes.
For a little while. So have you seen any differences between performing in the States versus in South Africa?
I mean, yeah, definitely. So the first night of my performance in Chicago was at the Comedy Bar. All right. And I remember going on stage, and I just had 5 minutes as an opener. And I went on stage, and what was interesting was, I think what set me aside from that particular lineup of that evening was, they were really young. Like, they were really young. And I felt that, some of it was quite animated. And everything I do is rooted in honesty. And so I was like, okay, cool, man. I'm sitting there and I'm listening to the kinds of jokes, right? So, it's very Will Ferrell kind of style of comedy. And I'm, to some degree, I really rarely talk about sex or things like that. So there was a few of those type of things that, to me personally, was like, oh, she went there. Oh, he went there. Oh, they went there, But I had to trust I had to trust myself, no matter what I see in front of me happening or with other performers, I have to remember who I am. And the biggest mistake I would make is to try and compare myself to someone else. Because I'm not an American, I'm a South African, and I had a story to tell. And I went up and I said, and I opened up and I just greeted them and I was like, and I just started clicking and they all went, what? I said, oh my God, I'm so sorry. Oh, we're in America, you know, and then they went, ah. So I kind of just, you know, broke the ice with that. And it was like, oh, you know, you guys heard I'm South African and yes, we're wearing clothes now, you know. And so, and I think that was just like very refreshing. The manager came in to watch my set and I was like, oh, and I got an email from her the next morning and I was like, oh, and the email said she thoroughly enjoyed my set so much. And I had a bit about a baby who was actually my niece, you know, why I'm afraid of kids, you know. And she loved that bit. And then she said, do you mind headlining the rest of the weekend? So again, I think I constantly get affirmations that if I just stay true to who I am, you know, and I have the ability to communicate with people in a language that they understand, and I have the ability to still give the same punt in the joke as I would in Afrikaans. I had to find, that was the only hurdle I had to overcome, was how do I take the exact same joke, but I have to tell it in an American context. And then you kind of make, you know, you change references here and there just so that it is a little bit more familiar to the American audience.
Is there anything that we didn't really touch on that you would like to share about your work or storytelling in general, whether it's South African storytelling or universal?
Well, I mean, I'm a South African, so I'm going to stick to what I know. You know, I must say that the film industry has shifted tremendously over the last, I should say, 5 years since Netflix has entered the realm of South African film, and it's a good thing. It's a very, very good thing for us, you know, because it is one platform that has truly allowed us as South African creators, artists, performers in whatever shape or form to be as authentic as you can be and should be. For instance, don't participate or subscribe to a lot of soapies in South Africa. I mean, I've never said this out loud, but I don't mind. You know, I've turned down quite a lot. I've turned down quite a lot of work in the 20 years that I've been in the business. And that is simply because I have integrity and I have true values that I stand by as a woman of color in this business. I don't have to change my voice. I don't have to adapt to a depiction in order for certain people to feel comfortable with us. And that's kind of the sad thing that's been in South Africa for a very long time, is you can very quickly become a caricature within the white world of filmmaking. Very quickly. You either play the funny character, or you play the character that has to pick up after everyone else, or you play the character that is just destitute, you know, within the white Afrikaans world of filmmaking. And I have been very successful at crafting out a very clear identity for myself. And I think that they have they've woken up to, you know, because my no was my no. And like I say, I don't come from a lot. So it's never been an issue of, am I going to go hungry? No, I won't. Because I've been blessed with an incredible talent so that I could eat. You know, the idea that you have to give up something that special is just ludicrous to me. It's really ludicrous to me, because nothing lasts forever. This too shall pass, I promise you. And then Netflix comes along and I'm like, look, I told you guys, we get to do our stories the way that it's meant to be done, you know. And we do have international appeal. We really do. We do not have to keep looking at America. And no offense to Americans, I love them. But I think this has been the challenge being a person of color in this country, just culturally, is, there is an immense influx of Western culture within South African, particularly Black communities. We don't need to do that simply to have international appeal or acceptance, because we're dealing in feelings, honey. That's what we're dealing in. Just get the feelings right, and
this is why it's one of my favorite is to interview international filmmakers. It was just an idea. They're like, Tara, you'll be in Rome. Should we see if we can find somebody?
That.
And so I did, and I'm like, I loved hearing his perspective.
Yes.
And then every country I go to, I was like, do you know a filmmaker? And they're like, what? Sure, maybe. And then because you're right, it's all about emotion and feelings, and those are universal.
Absolutely. So, I believe everything starts with the writing. If you want to have an impact and a shift in change, become part of the writing process. That's really where we are going to be able to change perspective and hopefully bring back fun, man. I love having fun. Let's just have fun.
Well, thank you so
You're
much.
Welcome.
Thank you for listening to Media and Monuments, a service of Women in Film and Video in Washington, D.C. Please remember to review, rate, and subscribe wherever you listen to this podcast. For more information about WIF, please visit our website at WIF as in Frank, V as in Victor.org.